Life handed us an unbelievable story today, proof that competence has no age and that truth steamrolls prejudice. Meet Cecilia, a 7-year-old who walked into a courtroom and delivered a masterclass in dignity, proving that love is worth more than any fortune. Her story is a hymn to resilience, precocious insight, and unconditional love, blooming in adversity. The courtroom. The Third Family Division of the New York County Family Court had fallen into absolute silence. Judge Robert Mann, 58, 3 decades on the bench, kept polishing his glasses as if vision alone would help him comprehend what he was witnessing. He had seen everything: scorched earth divorces, vicious property fights, endless custody wars. But what now stood before him was unprecedented. At the center of the room stood a 7-year-old girl named Cecilia, holding a folder plastered with unicorn stickers and wearing an expression of unshakable conviction. Her chin lifted like a young professional at the start of a crucial oral argument. She looked straight at the bench and sent a single sentence ringing through the room. "I am my mother's attorney. My mother's name is Rose." In the back row sat her mother, Rose, a night shift cleaner paid barely above minimum wage. She hid her face in calloused palms, humiliated yet overwhelmed with pride at her daughter's audacity. Rose had begged Cecilia not to do this, certain the judge would forbid it, afraid the embarrassment would be unbearable. But the child's resolve had the density of steel. On the right side table, the father, Richard Ferris, a successful businessman, sat beside his expensive lawyer, Mark Sanderson. Richard began to laugh, loud and hollow. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. The child is playing pretend. Remove her immediately." Sanderson rose to demand the child's removal, invoking the solemnity of procedure and the natural order of justice in which only the credentialed may speak. Cecilia didn't move an inch. Her stillness thundered louder than any voice. When she spoke, it felt like a fuse reached flame. "Your Honor, state law affirms that a child has the right to be heard in any proceeding that concerns her interests. My words aren't play acting. They are a legally protected voice." Silence returned, this time the silence of collective shock, mixed with involuntary recognition and respect for a mind that shouldn't be this sharp at 7. She moved into the merits. Her father, she said, had failed his fundamental duties, abandoning her for 3 consecutive years. He had neglected not only financial support, but what mattered infinitely more: emotional presence, daily care, guidance. Under the best interests of the child standard, custody should be awarded to the parent who actually shows up. "I am living proof of my father's unfitness," she said, "a human document of neglect." Then came the truth, stripped to the bone. Cecilia pulled out an old phone, and the bomb turned nuclear. "I have evidence of my father's true intentions, intentions that have nothing to do with affection or parental duty." The recording poured through a small speaker, plain and devastating. Richard's voice was unmistakable. "I want custody of the kid, and I want it fast. She's about to inherit a nice chunk from her granddad, almost 2 million rials. If I have custody, I manage the money. This is my shot at saving the company." Approximately $400,000. Cecilia said it that way in words so no one could miss it. The courtroom became a tomb. Greed, pure and undiluted, shone under a light that a 7-year-old had turned on without blinking. Richard drained pale. The arrogant smile collapsed into panic. Sanderson scrambled to argue the recording was illegal, inadmissible. But Cecilia calmly supplied the counterpoint like a seasoned litigator. "It isn't unlawful when one of the people in the conversation initiates the recording to protect her own rights. Our state allows one-party consent. I recorded him to prove he meant to use me as a financial object." Murmurs rippled across the benches. Cecilia opened the folder. She produced her report cards, straight A work, evidence of a home anchored in routine, care, and support. She showed notes from school documenting that in 2 years, her father had appeared exactly 0 times. He didn't know her teacher's name, her best friend's, or even her favorite color. "He failed the duties that love performs without being asked," she said. Then she sealed the coffin of paternal arrogance. "I formally renounce my grandfather's inheritance," she said, the words steady. "I don't want the $400,000. The gasp was universal. She explained the lesson her father could not grasp. "I'd rather live with love and dignity beside my mother than be rich with a father who doesn't love me and sees me as a bank account. My mother's love is worth far more than $400,000. The judge's eyes glistened. For the first time in that courtroom's history, he gave a child the title her courage had earned. "You may proceed, Attorney Cecilia." When the ruling came, that day a rarity, the judge awarded sole custody to Rose. When love is reinforced by truth and law, money loses. The backstage story. The seed of revolution sprouted 3 weeks earlier in a small apartment that smelled of pine cleaner and simmering beans. Rose had come home exhausted, palms stinging from harsh chemicals, spirit sagging under fatigue. On the plastic table lay a pale envelope, a custody citation. Richard, absent father turned opportunist, was petitioning for custody, bragging of greater financial means and counting on the windfall inheritance. Rose crumpled. A legal aid attorney had been pessimistic. "He has resources, Rose. The courts, unfortunately, weigh that heavily. It's going to be tough." Cecilia watched her mother's tears, not the tears of physical pain, but those of a mother fearing the loss of her child. In that instant, the 7-year-old no longer saw her mother as a cleaner, but as a heroine in danger. And Cecilia would be her defender. "What are resources, Mom? What does custody mean? And what good are better finances if he never gives me a hug?" Rose tried to simplify a labyrinth, but Cecilia's curiosity breathed fire. She proposed a solution that would change their lives. "Then we study the law, Mom. We study the law harder than he studies money." Their library amounted to an old phone with spotty internet, when a kind neighbor shared Wi-Fi, and a few outdated legal paperbacks Rose had rescued from a dumpster behind a law office. Trash for one world, treasure for another. Rose, who hadn't finished high school, read statutes out loud, stumbling over words like litigation, precedent, and jurisprudence. Cecilia, gifted with the practical mind of a born advocate, translated the tangled sentences into strategies they could use. They built a glossary on the back of last year's wall calendar. They discovered the principle that put steel in Cecilia's spine. The best interest standard meant the court must hear the child whose life would be shaped by the ruling. "Mom, the law says I should be heard," she said, eyes wide and bright. "Not his lawyer, me." Then came the duties of parenthood. Support, care, education, presence. Rose read, Cecilia counted. "He hasn't paid school fees in months. He misses meetings. He doesn't know if I dream of being a vet. He failed almost every requirement." The recording arrived by accident and instinct. In the park one Saturday, Cecilia overheard her father bragging over the phone about the granddad money and his plan to leverage custody as a financial lever. Shock knocked the air out of her. She had believed the late-blooming visits were born of sudden missing. Instead, she saw a spreadsheet where her heart stood. She slipped the old phone under her backpack flap and tapped record. When Rose panicked, fearing it was illegal, Cecilia went to the public library. With the gentle help of a librarian, who was told this was for an advanced school project, Cecilia learned that in their state, one-party consent made recordings lawful. Rose became her daughter's paralegal, strategist, and steadying hand. The unicorn folder became their dossier, report cards, school notices proving his 0 appearances, a summer camp form he never signed. Each sheet was a small sacrifice and a moral weapon. The hardest piece was the inheritance. When Cecilia said she would renounce it, Rose cried. That money could change their lives. But Cecilia was unshakable. "Mum, that money smells like Dad's lie. I don't want a gift he only wants back by taking me from you. I don't want $400,000 if the price is our peace." It was the masterstroke. No financial argument could outflank the moral clarity of that gesture. The aftermath. The verdict was only the beginning. Word of Attorney Cecilia, the 7-year-old who unmasked a greedy father, slipped out of court. Within hours, the story rippled across the city. Judge Mann called Rose and Cecilia into chambers the next day to safeguard them. He wanted to be certain the renunciation was freely made, not coaxed by adult pressure. Rose confirmed the choice was fully Cecilia's. "Your child didn't just win a custody case, Ms. Rose. the judge said, voice tight with feeling. She restored a piece of my faith in what we're here to do. She reminded me that law has a purpose beyond paperwork, to hear the truth and protect the vulnerable. He appended a formal note to the file praising the extraordinary maturity, legal acuity, and moral integrity of the minor, Cecilia, and suggested that law schools examine the case as a moral precedent. The other table swallowed humiliation. Attorney Mark Sanderson's reputation was scorched. Clients trickled away. Money buys fabric and tailoring, not dignity. Richard Ferris became a headline, the father with 400,000 reasons. Friends ghosted him. Business contracts cooled. Worst of all came the codicil in the grandfather's will. The inheritance could be managed by a parent only if the custody judge certified moral suitability. Richard was deemed unfit. The money was frozen under court supervision and placed in a protected account to be released to Cecilia when she reached adulthood. Richard lost custody, lost control of the inheritance, and his child support was recalculated to the legal maximum, garnished directly from wages. Life changed for Rose and Cecilia, though not because of sudden wealth. A senior attorney who had watched the hearing offered Rose a job as an office assistant. The pay, about $3,000 a month, brought new stability and the dignity of work that didn't destroy her health. Cecilia became a small, clear bell of courage in a noisy world. Schools, bar associations, and legal clinics invited her to speak. She always delivered the same distilled lesson. Love is the first and most important law, and truth is the only precedent that never fails. The $400,000 in inheritance stayed untouched, a ghost of the past that no longer held their attention. The real treasure was the present, quiet, dignity, and the unbreakable bond of trust between mother and daughter. Rose liked to say, smiling through tears, "We traded $400,000 for something priceless, the certainty that my daughter will grow up knowing honesty and affection are worth more than any fortune." And Cecilia would add, "Love, Mom, is the only contract we should never breach, and it doesn't need a termination clause." The saga of attorney Cecilia reminds us that age is only a number, and true wisdom lives in moral courage, not in bank balances. Years later, Cecilia kept studying with the same ferocious curiosity. By the time she was old enough to sit for the bar, she passed on her first try, the youngest in her state that year, and devoted her practice to children and struggling families. Her journey wasn't a one-off miracle, but the start of a vocation, a long, bright fight for justice, grounded in the simplest truth her 7-year-old self once spoke to power: love outweighs money, and dignity outruns fear.